All right. Why are so many CEOs leaving one of their most powerful business assets on the table? Their story. Today's guest, Kae Wagner, helps leaders transform their expertise into books that build influence, attract clients, and create opportunities far beyond traditional marketing. Kae, welcome to the Go4CEO channel. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. How are you doing? I'm so happy to be here with you today. I love your energy.
Awesome, awesome. Well, likewise, off camera, you were sharing with me some really astute, things that you were sharing with me and showing me, and so I'm excited because I think our audience is going to learn a lot today about what you do, and then also more importantly, how you're impacting and what you're doing in business to really make a difference. So, Kate, one of the things that we do initially is talk about the ideation, point of it, right? And your two companies, and how did you come from corporate America? Were you always an entrepreneur? What's your background? So those types of things, we'd love to initially hear from you, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Great. So yes, I come from an entrepreneurial family. So I'm number 8 out of 10 kids.
Oh, wow.
And I think, let's see, almost every one of them has an entrepreneurial spirit and has built successful companies. So number 8, I followed in those footsteps. I was in television for a while, in advertising agency for a while, but I had the entrepreneurial itch, and so I started a marketing agency, which I've run now for a number of years. But I've also been a writer all my life, and I actually won my first writing award when I was 13 years old. And
Hmm.
really kind of offbeat story here, John, but I grew up on a dairy farm. And so we were very involved in the Future Farmers of America, FFA. And they had this writing contest, and I wrote a radio script, and I won an award that was this high. And I'm like, my 13-year-old brain is saying, wow, this writing thing could be something, right?
Mhm.
And so then I was published in high school and went on to write a lot of marketing copy, ad copy, direct mail copy, all in the marketing and sales area. But I had, and so I published a couple of books, and we'll talk about that story because those two books changed my life. But then I had an itch for fiction. I had a story in my brain and my heart that wouldn't go away. And so I switched to fiction 2 years ago. I have since become a very prolific author. And in 2 years' time, I've written or co-written 8 books and published
Hmm.
them.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a mean machine at this, at the keyboard. Keyboard warrior, I think is the term. Anyway, so that's the short version.
So, look, I mean, obviously, your experience at a 13-year-old, and I've got a 14-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, and a 6-year-old daughter. So I love talking to the
Awesome.
ladies and the impact that women can make. And obviously, I shared my wife is in the back room. I had overheard our off camera stuff, and there's such a neat process in our life, right? Where these scenarios and situations in life that kind of impact us. And sometimes we don't think of it in the moment, right? But
Right.
look, how many years later, that 13-year-old love and experience of writing a book has flourished into something so dynamic. So, yeah, the marketing business, right? Well, you said that you kind of worked in industry, so you had already been in the marketing industry and kind of cut your teeth as an executive in that sense, or give us a little bit about that background.
Yeah, so I was in an advertising agency. I think I worked there for 3 years. I was in television for 3 years, so it was kind of a progression. And when I was in the advertising agency, I just saw ways that marketing and advertising could be done better. And I always knew at some point I was going to have my own business anyway. And so the ad agency work was really the springboard into the marketing agency, into North Star Marketing. And that was because we started with strategy. I'm a strategist at heart. And so if you've ever heard of like strength finders or
Mhm.
the DISC or Myers-Briggs, any of those. I've taken all of them and I always come out as a strategist. That's how my brain works. And so marketing and advertising is done best when you actually have a strategy, not just like, oh, why don't we run some ads or why don't we do TikTok or why don't we, do this or that. So I use the strength of strategies to launch North Star Marketing. We've been very successful. And then the books really took us to a next level as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a good combination, right? When you think about, I think books have, at least being a kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s, you always thought, oh wow, that person wrote a book, right? There's some sort of interesting authority to it,
Yeah,
credibility that kind of ends up being a part of that, right? And I don't know that that was my intention, right, in my book, but it was more legacy and things that I'm starting to think of,
right,
being a father of three daughters and stuff like that. So, but look, so all right, you find the rhythm of what you do in your life, and then you're always kind of thinking to yourself, boy, I know I'm going to start my own business. And North Star happens to be, that was the first thing, right, that you started?
right. Yep,
All right. So then tell us, what does that transition look like? Because a lot of our subscribers and people that love our show, think about, hey, I'm in corporate America, right? And I may be in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, but I want to make a move. And a lot of times it's that jumping feeling that they don't feel secure about because it's nice to have a paycheck or what have you, right? And there's nothing wrong with corporate America. I feel like there's an entrepreneur, I call it affectionately, when you're
right,
in
right.
in a corporate world. But that entrepreneur side, what did that look like for you, and how did you get your first client, as an example?
Right. So I didn't know it at the time, but when I took the step and I stepped out of the agency that I was working with and I started North Star Marketing, it literally felt like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. Like suddenly I was free falling and every decision was my decision. And I had people to help me make decisions, but ultimately, all of the decision making was mine, and all of the responsibility was mine. All of the risk was mine. And what I eventually discovered was the reward was mine as well, right?
Hmm.
But you start out with this huge amount of energy, and there's a lot of uninformed enthusiasm going on. Like, I am going to make millions at this and it's going to happen this way. And the optimism is off the charts, as it should be. However, it's generally uninformed. And
Hmm.
so, we start that way and then we hit reality and then we go through the valley of despair. And if we stick with it, we come out of it. That progression comes from Connor's what is it? It's Connor's circuit of growth, I think, something like that. I can send a link out to you. You can put in the show notes. But everything happens, new initiatives always happen that way. Another book that captures that is called The Gap. No, it's called The Dip. And you always start out on this high until reality hits, until you realize that there's a lot of work here. And suddenly, when I could have walked out of my old job at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock and left it behind, there is no such thing anymore when you're an entrepreneur, when you own your own business. You have the hardest boss in the world. You can't ever get away from your boss because your mind is going 24/7. So there's a lot of internal adjustment that has to be made as you go through that first year, first 2 years, first 3 years. But I was very fortunate when I decided to launch my business. I actually had clients who were waiting for me to do it.
Hmm.
And so I was able to start with a good, solid client base. And, and that's a great way to start because you're not starting at zero, you're starting with revenue coming in the door. And so we grew from there. I started a marketing agency, not an advertising agency, because I wanted clear differentiation and positioning. I gave our people different names than ad agencies gave their people titles. Our
Mm,
titles were different. We had a philosophy statement set up. We did branding extremely well. And so we were able to become distinctive early on. And then when I wrote the two books on branding and marketing, that's what really propelled us into the limelight.
hmm. So were you in the SMB world or did you go right to enterprise level clients? What were some of when you said they were waiting for you, I presume the relationships you had always kind of knocked on your or tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Kay, you should do this on your own," or
Yeah.
that type of encouragement. I can imagine. So, what type of businesses were looking for your services at that point?
Yeah, so it was actually a combination of small businesses and then some enterprise businesses as well. And so with the enterprise businesses, we would take a piece of the business, and then as I grew the business, we could take more and more of their marketing and sales
Mm.
needs. We could meet more of them. We did a bunch of startups that some worked, some didn't work. Funding was off. Structure and strategy was not in place, that kind of thing. And so I became a little wary of startups. But it was primarily, we did a huge amount of food companies. Really got a reputation in food companies and food ingredients. We did a lot of manufacturers. We did professional services. And I developed a marketing management system, which was unique for us. No one else did it. It ran totally counter to what the industry was currently doing, and it was hugely successful.
Mm. Well, disruption is the innovation side, right? So I
Right.
love it. I love it. So you had a little bit of a disruption gene in you.
I love a
So
good disruption.
well, and you talked about something right now where you said that the startups didn't have a really a strategy, right? A framework of how they were really kind of using their marketing dollars. Maybe the burn rate of their funding kind of went pretty fast.
Yeah.
I guess in that sense, because entrepreneurs now made entrepreneurs from an entrepreneurship standpoint when they're making that leap, sometimes you could focus on four or five different things. And I know that you said earlier you had that strength of, strategy, and that's kind of how
Right.
your brain works. What, what I guess held you back, or what made sure that you stayed focused on marketing? Because you could have easily said, well, hey, I can help you with strategy too. And how did that look like for you in those beginning years?
Right. So we did help people with marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So not to be confused with overall strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I do work with companies on the overall strategy through EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mm-hmm.
EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So I've been certified in that, and I work with clients in that manner as well, which is, overall strategy. But marketing strategy became really important because CEOs and even, senior vice presidents don't really understand where marketing starts and ends and where the sales cycle starts and ends and where the branding fits in. So that was primarily the driving force behind writing a book on marketing and then a book on branding. So the marketing book is the power principles of marketing, the 10 power principles of marketing, and the branding book is the CEO's little black book on branding. They are now being rewritten for the second edition to bring them back up to 2026 to, current stories. Because the stories that I told originally were companies back in the like 2005, 2015 in that time frame. So strategy became a part of what we did. We always worked and set a strategy at the beginning. And that was different for a lot of companies. They didn't understand how marketing strategy fit in. The 5 Ps: differentiation, positioning, building a moat around your business so that you couldn't be disrupted, so that you were safe as a company. And we would go through all of those exercises, and then we would build and implement the marketing management system. And so it was the combination of those two that worked.
So, Kay, in the beginning stages, and I keep on coming back to the beginning because I think it's such a fascinating, change, right, that entrepreneurs have into entrepreneurship, but
Right,
those first few years are vital for any business to really go from solopreneur to business owner, right?
yes.
So what of those 5 Ps was there a method to your madness that you had developed prior? Did you kind of go, as time went, tweaked and developed ways that these clients can now better, give you information? Data is key, right, to be able to decipher a strategy. As an example, what were some of the ways that you finally, finalized some things? And they're always tweaking, but
Right,
what were some
right.
of the ways that you did that?
Yeah, so I would say number one was we educated our clients. So through the strategic process, the 5 Ps, educating people on what those strategies were as we were developing them, why they were important, how to use them. And then moving into the marketing management system was the tactical side. This is what we executed on. And this is what actually met the strategies, right? So strategy and execution tactics. Um, and so educating clients was really critical in those first years to be able for them to be aligned with what we were doing so we could walk in lockstep together so that we were not doing things and promising things that they didn't understand. Because marketing and sales, people do not understand the differentiation between the two. And so what I discovered when people called us for a marketing plan for marketing, what they really wanted was sales,
Mhm.
right? And too many people would wait until they were in a jam or having a problem and then expect marketing to be a quick fix. Oh, if you just get your marketing right, you'll have a quick fix and then you'll be good. It doesn't work that way. Marketing takes time, opens the doors, paves the road for sales to come in. And I will just tell your readers, if or your viewers and listeners, if you're struggling with sales, it's probably because your marketing foundation hasn't been built. When a marketing foundation is built and it's strong, it makes selling easy. When branding is in place and strong and consistent and congruent, it makes selling magical.
Mm.
But if you don't have those, you're always going to be knocking on doors.
It's interesting. You made me think, and this is we could have almost a separate episode on this. It's always been my side. I've had my competencies in sales, right, and developing those 7 to 8 touches, understanding how to get to a client to make a decision. If you're
Hmm.
dealing with a decision maker in the first place, those types of things on the sales side, right? And it's always been interesting because, for me, when I hear you say that, and the GO4CEO community might, connect to this, is it's all the stuff that happens until the person picks up the phone and calls your company. It's all the stuff before the inquiry online and they submit their form. That's to me marketing and branding, right? And then when you pick up the phone, I was just with a med spa guy yesterday. He's a private equity guy in the IT space, but he also started a med spa. And he says, we're the industry is at $54 for CAC, right? Cost of acquisition. And we're
Hmm.
at $4. He's like, how do you think we do that? And he was telling me his strategy and stuff. And it was like blowing my mind because it's in the same industry, yet he's killing his competition from
Yeah.
a dollar acquisition standpoint. And a lot of it is the branding and marketing. But then he's tweaking the way his gals pick up the phone instantaneously, looking for AI agents, stuff like that. So, what a
Right.
cool, area and form of business. So, you know, one of the things that comes to mind, I guess, is then, you know, in that pathway for your client, are you tweaking the way that you also engage with them? because you find opportunities within those, four or five P's?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a confluence, there's a point of intersection with sales and marketing and storytelling, right?
Hmm.
And words matter. Words matter in marketing. You just said something really, really important, and I hope people pick up on it. The guy you were talking to, the med spa guy said, things can change even when they pick up the phone and what they say.
Hmm.
So, like that phrase, people get careless with that phrase. But when you find that magic phrase that is like the one that your caller, that the person that you're talking to wants to hear, then you're golden. And so people will start to slap things together. And mistake number two, they don't test. I'm a
Hmm.
huge believer in testing. Like if I say, good morning, how are you? Welcome to XYZ, as opposed to, hi, how are you? How can we help you? Those are just two examples. Test A against test B. So for example, I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago, and in their email signature, they say, um, please leave a review. No, please uh, give me a referral. It would mean the world to me. And I said, guys, nobody cares about you. You have to give them a better reason to give a referral or a review. Nobody cares if it would mean the world to you. You know, they're not going to take 5 minutes out of their day to do that just because it would mean the world to you. So words matter, how you stack your messaging, and everything that you are messaging prior to when you call, prior to when the inquiry comes in, all of that messaging should be stacked. In other words, there's a deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper message that develops over time. Think of it like as an iceberg, right? The tip of the iceberg, one short phrase, next one is a deeper message, deeper message, deeper message. I take people through an exercise, which is really a lot of fun. So we do messaging like this. All right, think of your message in your company and what would it look like if you had to reduce it to a stock ticker? What would it be like if you had to reduce it to a license plate? What would it be like? What would it sound like if you reduced it to Hemingway's 6 word story? 6 words that would tell the message of your company. And we go through these exercises because it's much harder to be concise than it is to go on and on and on and on and on forever, like I've just done with your question, because I think I veered off of your question, John.
No, no, no. It's really a lot of it's really kind of building on itself. So please go on, or if you're done, that's okay too, right? So that was perfect.
Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, look, one of the areas that we are always, very curious about is as you've developed this, business and you came from the experience that you had, what are some of the ways that you started to develop the compensation, the revenue side of things, right? The charging of your clients. Did you start to look at it from an MRR, an ARR? Did you just say, hey, you know what? I think I'm worth $300 an hour and just randomly put it out there. So what are the ways that you started to be able to capitalize revenue in your business? If you think about it from the beginning slides to now, has it changed, even to a 180 nowadays because of the brand and the distinguished level that you're at? How does that look like?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because what we did with the marketing management system was totally based on disrupting how agencies charge their clients. And so I have always been of the thought this, in the creative world, if you charge by the hour, you are crazy
Mm,
because creativity can happen like that, but it comes from years of experience, right? And so in the marketing management system, what we did was we would create the whole system. We would, we had some very specific ways that we attached dollars to the cost of that system. We would take that system, we would break it down into 12 months, and the client paid that monthly fee, right?
Hmm.
So it was a retainer that was based on what we knew from experience would be involved with those tactics. And then, of course, we had additional services built into that, like consultation, strategizing, that kind of thing. I never wanted to be in the trap of keeping time and charging by the hour. Many agencies, just like attorneys and accountants, they got a clock ticking, right? Now there's
Hmm.
software you can buy as soon as you're working on it, it tracks your time. I never wanted to be in the time trap for the reason that if you are a good creative director, you don't always need a lot of time to create sales winning materials. But I did not want to be penalized because I did really great work fast.
It makes me think of I forgot what the story was, but some sort of plumber charged
Yes,
$1,000 and he did it in 15 minutes. And then there's context there, right? Is the homeowner's like, well, that only took you 15 minutes. Why'd you charge me 1,000? He's like, well, you don't know what I know, right? Like something to that
right,
effect. So there is that, right? And then
right.
obviously the disruption that you were looking at from an MRR standpoint. And I love that. I love that 12 month because it already sets the mindset for the client to be with you for 12 months, number one. Number two,
Right.
you give them an option on a monthly, and I'm assuming they had an out. Could they were they month to month, but with a 12-month
No,
vision,
no,
or they
no.
actually
It
signed
was,
for 12 months?
yeah, it was a 12-month commitment.
Okay,
And
okay.
and what's really important about that is that so from a cash flow perspective, you knew exactly what the cash flow was
Mm,
going to be, right? Which is beautiful. That is like the most beautiful thing in a business, especially when you're first getting started. Being able to
yeah.
count on cash flow is like I can sleep at night. But the other thing that helped was so projects inevitably slide, right? There's project creep, there's all kinds of things that happen. But by setting up the marketing management system in that way, it didn't matter if the project slid or not. We were getting paid for that month. And often projects slide because of the client. And again, I did not want to be penalized for client inaction, client delays, client lack of focus, client, messiness.
Mm,
That was not my problem. So I was training them to think in ways of getting the stuff back to us in a timely manner so that we could do our work because we were getting paid even if they were not, fully organized.
mm. So my banker hat says to me, okay, she put a 12-month contract together with a monthly subscription model, right, where they had to pay. So were they paying via check back in the days? Were they paying ACH? Were they paying via credit card? And were you then, deferring that charge that you get as a merchant on that? What were some of the ways just to kind of get a little bit nitty gritty on how you actually processed that payment cycle?
Yeah, so we primarily processed checks and then ACH. I would, that kind of money I wasn't taking on credit cards. We're talking $1 million programs. So,
Mm.
um, I'll take a check. Thank you very much. I'm not giving up a
All
credit
right.
card fee on that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting because nowadays it's funny. Being the commercial banker day to day, there are some vendors and some clients that are paying $1.5 million on one credit card. It's called a commercial card, so it's got a huge.
Right,
It's not like an American Express per se, but you have to qualify for that and all that type of
right,
stuff. So
right.
there are some guardrails in there. So all right, look. We've talked about North Star marketing, where that vision came from, how it came from the entrepreneur side to the entrepreneur side. And gosh, the disruption that you created, it sounds pretty awesome. And you've shared really some really nice areas of value. So, Bold Authors Network. At
Yes.
what point does Bold Authors Network then become, okay, this is the right time for me to launch Bold Authors Network? Or am I missing something? Was it always parallel to North Star and as you were building North Star?
Right. No, so you didn't miss anything, number one. So I started the Bold Authors Network about a year and a half ago. Well,
Mm,
not a year and a half, in January of 2025. I had been writing for, 15 years, 20 years, and then had switched to fiction. When I switched to fiction, fiction is a whole different ball game than nonfiction. I love them both. I still write both in fiction and nonfiction. But fiction tends to um, be more visible when you gather a crowd, right? And so I wrote a series in 2025 that got a lot of attention. And so I had a lot of authors who were coming to me and, wanting consultations and advice and that kind of thing. So I developed the Bold Authors Network, and we do a promo hour every Monday from 4 to 5. And so that's where people come, and I do some teaching. We do a lot of collaborations, a lot of connecting, a lot of networking, that kind of thing. And what we focus on, what I discovered in the pattern of questions that authors came to me about, was that in the process of writing, publishing, marketing was where the greatest problem was. So bingo, that's my area of expertise, right? So it made a natural fit to teach authors how to market. And so
mhm,
that's where the Bold Authors Network, how it developed organically to fill a need, to fill a gap that was in the marketplace. From there, and because I also love nonfiction, I had the opportunity to work with two of our Bold Author Network authors and write business fables. So the first one is 10 Things I Learned from the Billionaire. And this was written with Calvin Schwartz and myself. 10 Things I Learned from the Billionaire is a business fable. So my sweet spot in writing with CEOs and with writing on the nonfiction side is business fables. It's the perfect confluence of commerce, business leadership, and storytelling. And
mm,
so it's a business fable, but I'll tell you just a real quick insider story on this one. In the billionaire book, the billionaire is never, he's anonymous. He's never noted. The billionaire, the real life billionaire in that book, is a guy who is from Italy. He passed away 3 years ago. And he started the eyewear company that grew to international global eyewear company classes.
mm,
He
mhm,
was the first company that used a designer, George Armani, to design glasses.
mm.
And then about 7 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg and team went over and met with him. And that meeting resulted in what today is the Ray-Ban Meta glasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that
Wow.
billionaire knew a thing or two.
A little bit. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
And
And then you have
so,
another book, right? That's coming
yes,
out.
another one. And I just gave away my last copy of this one, but this one is Crash and Burn. I don't know whether to go forward or
Yeah.
back. Crash
No, it's
and
perfect.
Burn.
Yep.
This book is really amazing. It also is a business fable, totally different than the billionaire book. But this is the story of a CEO who had private equity behind him, and they had a fever for acquisitions. And he was on an acquisition spree, I think 5 acquisitions in 3 to 4 years, and totally burned out. And not only burned out, but crashed, broke down,
Mm,
and was exited out of the business. So he was on this acquisition spree with the big payoff after the roll up, and then the sale was going to net him millions of dollars. So he was blinded by his own ambition, and I applaud his courage and his vulnerability in telling his story of the crash. And so in the book, we talk about the 10 blind spots that lead to burnout. And one of them is blind ambition, just not realizing that you are in pursuit of a perhaps false god, so to
Yeah.
speak.
No, yeah, that's huge. I've got a couple buddies in that space that have had great runs, and a couple that have exited with large amounts and have lost their life, meaning
Right.
marriage is dissolved and kids are estrayed, and they've gone a little bit crazy on their Instagram, and now they're more of a celebrity because lost their way, right, and stuff like that. So, and again,
Yeah.
not judgy to that, but it's interesting when you take a step back. And I'll be selfish. Like my book talks about the first chapter, assess, and the 4A formula, and
Mhm.
I've challenged you, and these are friends that sometimes, right, more successful than I am, but it's funny from a perspective of a lens that I could see them as a friend, that I
Mhm.
say to them, hey, XYZ feedback, right? And I'm always particular to say, hey, are you open to some 360 feedback? Because not everybody wants it, right?
That's
Or,
true.
or
Yeah.
ready to listen to it or what have you.
Right.
And it's been interesting to kind of have that perspective. I gave an example with my last podcast. I took some first, second, and third grade friends, and I just turned 50 last year. So
Oh,
um,
happy
to
birthday.
be
Happy
with some
50.
thank you, thank you. So I went to a Blackhawks game. It's a hockey game at the United Center with some friends from first, second, and third grade, and it
Wow.
was so interesting to take a step back for a second. I remember there was a moment last Friday where they were all kind of eating because we were in a nice club area, um, and I just took a second and just kind of said, "Wow, this is amazing to be friends
Yeah.
with some guys at 6, 7, 8 years old, and now 40 something years later." To have this experience in a nice club seat area. We were all doing pretty well in our life, but to have that experience and to then give feedback because one of them has been a divorce a couple of times, one of them's been this or whatever, that type of thing. And my own marriage, right, is never easy. So you
Right.
always
Right.
gotta work at it and stuff like that. So, all right, look, the Bold Authors Network, right, and North
Yes.
Star Marketing. I mean, two very powerful companies, and this last one that you created, what's the monetization side of that? Is it just community? Is it giving back to authors? I can boldly say now I'm an author, right? So I might have to
Right.
think about joining the
Congratulations.
network.
Yes,
What
I
does it
hope you
look like
do. I
for
hope you
for people
do.
that are interested in the Bold Authors Network as well?
Yeah, so the Bold Authors Network, the best thing to do is to go to theboldauthors.network.com to sign up there's a form there to sign up. You'll get notifications of promo hour. That gets you into our world. That
Hmm.
gets you into promo hour. That gives you access to what's going on. Um, and of course, John, I think you know me well enough within the past hour to know that I would not miss the opportunity to monetize something in the Bold Authors Network, right? So part of that is to build the Bold Authors Book Agency, which is working with CEOs and other executives to tell their stories in business fable form so that then they can go on to make the millions that are available after the book, which is basically the consulting, the courses, the networks, the Substack, all of those things that you do after you've written the book. And there's not only a lot of meaning in that area, but there's also millions. And that's what I did when I, wrote and published the marketing book and the branding book. I was invited onto national stages. I got in front of my exact perfect audience. 3 weeks later, I'd get a call. My CEO told me about your book and what you talked about at this, in your speech, and he said we should work with you. Now, that, my friend, is the perfect example of good marketing that leads to easy sales,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's that call that we talked about, right? And you
Yeah,
were
that
ready for it
call.
and executing. So would you say, and this is a big deal because I'm just learning it, right? I took 2.5 years of writing this book. It came to me from my heart and my mind to put into the book. But in October we launched. So it's interesting. I guess selfishly, I'll ask this question. I've been trying to figure out, okay, Go for CEO, the podcast. commercial banker, SVP, right? Senior vice president title, all that stuff. And then now a book. How am I tying
Right.
that all together? And that's the interesting part is how to bring that all together. Because yeah, the book itself and the sales, unless you're Harry Potter and sell millions and millions of them, it's not
Right.
like making you a millionaire for by any means, the
Right.
whopping $7 or $10 that we make on it. So I guess any insights from that perspective with the Bold Authors Network that you would say that brings a ton of value of joining the organization and what you're and that movement that you have now.
Right. Yeah. So you already have the framework, right? Your next step would be what is after the framework of the book, the structure, the messaging, the market, right? The marketing, reaching your audience, and what is your offer? Are you going to be a consultant? Are you doing online courses? The thing about all of this is we write these books, and particularly in nonfiction, where we're doing a problem solution, right? And we're writing to the solution. People have difficulty applying what's in a book. I know it sounds like it should be really easy, like you should be able to pick up the book and inside is step one, step
Hmm.
two, step three. It doesn't
Hmm.
work that way. The human brain doesn't work that way. People need a guide, particularly now when there's so much information, some of which is true and much of which is not true.
Hmm.
And so, the question becomes, are you the guide, aka the consultant for a formula? And when you make that decision, then everything you do changes. Everything you do becomes very focused. Everything you do leads you to how do I get in front of my audience? So that's where the fun begins.
All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, it's and you left me with a little bit of a cliffhanger. I want more. Okay, I want more. Awesome, awesome. Well, that's genius, and that's your marketing mind and strategy mind. I could already see the wheels spinning for me. So awesome. Well, hey, look, the way we end our interviews are CEO, right? So
Okay.
client experience, and it's that value proposition between North Star Marketing, the Bold Authors Network, and the many things that you've been able to do in your life, but specifically the value prop, right? If you think about someone listening to this podcast and wanting to take action and
Yeah,
engage with your companies, does that value proposition look like? Maybe 30, 60-second value prop.
right. So the value prop is based on four V's. The first one is vision, know why you're doing what you're doing. The second one is your voice. Make sure your messaging is clear, pointed, and leads to action. The third one is visibility. If you're not visible, you're not viable. And the fourth one is value. Everything you do should bring value to your market. And value without meaning is vanity.
Mm.
To make sure that it's meaningful.
I have a great mentor of mine, Greg Cap, says, if it hit you, I didn't mean to miss you. Right? So,
Yeah,
wise man says that. Awesome. Well, E is for engagement. All right. So I'm always super interested in, I think our community is very much because everybody's answer is different. Should people want to engage with Kae, and how do you receive it? Do you like dinners? Are you an events person? Do you like the opera? I'm just giving you some ideas. Are you a retreat person? Do you like to go on vacation? What is the best ways that Kae loves to engage with other people?
right. So the best way to engage with me is to really start with the community, the Bold Authors Network community. And once you come into the community, I offer a free consult. We get to know each other, and then I start to point you in the directions that work best for you within the community, the collaborations that are available, the networking that's available. I'm in Florida. It's, cold everywhere else. So I'm probably not going to fly to Chicago to go to the opera with you, John, but thank you for the invitation.
All right. We'll wait till the
Or,
summer.
yeah, right. Um, but I do want to say one thing about that. You bring up a really good point about what is your preference. And I do believe that when people work in what's intuitively true for them, they come across in an authentic way. So, so what I would say about that, and I'm doing a series called 2026, the Year of the Human,
Mm,
and it's in my newsletter on LinkedIn, so people can find me on LinkedIn and then subscribe to the newsletter. I believe in 2026 and going forward in the age of AI, the Year of the Human becomes so important because everything is can be fabricated by AI. Everything can be done by AI that we do. And if it's not already being done by AI, it will be soon. And so I believe that the human spirit, the creative spirit, the spirit that God created in all of us is the one thing that AI will never be able to duplicate. And that spirit, that energy is what makes us human. And that is the connection that we so deeply need and desire. We long to be with people. We saw that happen after, during COVID. We
mhm.
long to be with other humans. And that's a human need that's never going to go away. And so in the year of the human, it is so important to show up physically and show up on Zoom, show up, participate, show up, do things in your local area, go to conferences, show up as a human. And that will help to move your business forward. And it will also deepen your relationships as well.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I talk about the 5 F's: faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun in the book.
Yeah.
And I stole that from someone, but I always use case, right? Copy and steal everything in that sense, because that
Yeah.
mind of just learning from others and giving them the credit, right? But also sharing it and kind of bringing it part of your own ecosystem. So, all right, last
Right.
one is operational excellence, and obviously
Mhm.
this one can get a little bit nitty gritty. Every business is different. What are the systems that you use? Are you a high go level, Monday.com? Are you an AI person now the last couple of years? What are some of the ways that, North Star and the Bold Authors Network are using operational excellence?
Yes. In today's world, operational excellence comes from the use of AI.
Mhm.
Um, I use, a lot of tools. I use ClickFunnels for, sales funnels. I use Kit for email. I use, things that are, readily available for everyone. But AI is the tool that increases productivity, that clarifies messages, that moves you forward, that keeps you accountable. It's the best accountability partner you will ever have. Um, and basically, I use AI every day. And for people who are reluctant to do that, you will get left behind.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big deal right now, and I think what people are trying to, I guess, adjust to is the fear mongering side of media, and everybody's going to lose their job, and it's over for humanity. To the, well, I don't want to use it at all. Like I don't need to use it, and that's wrong too, right? I remember
Right?
in early 2000s, I had a few buddies that were into website development and stuff, and one pretty big company out here called American Eagle. I knew them when they were nothing, like
Yeah.
just starting out, and those guys, the founders, had a vision of like, hey, you need to have a website. And it's interesting, they're in a similar situation where they created this brand, American Eagle, and building website and all that stuff. But now they've had to adjust too because websites aren't as important right now. Maybe
Right,
they
right,
tell, a bulletin board on the highway of the internet, but what gets engagement and what does this and that, right? And all that type of stuff.
right.
So awesome stuff. Well, Kay, it's been super pleasurable talking to you. It's one of the reasons I do this podcast. Selfishly, I get to meet so many people around the world because I have a podcast, right? And they want to be
Right,
on, and
right.
vice versa. And I get to give them evergreen, content and all that stuff. So, how are people supposed to get a hold of you if you want them directly to you or to your team? What would be the best way for people to engage with North Star and the Bold Authors Network?
Yes. So again, the front door is boldauthorsnetwork.com. I watch closely to who comes in and we communicate with you and then we start the conversation from there. But that's the best way. If you're a business owner or an author or a business owner who wants to be an author, um, that's the best way to start.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the GO4CEO channel. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, they always tell me to do it at the beginning, but I always like my hooks and things, and I always feel like the guest is more important than me blabbering about subscribe. But subscribe to the channel and also pick up my
Yes,
book,
subscribe,
Before.
everybody,
That's
subscribe.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you. So, and Kay gave me this tip. This used to just be a book standing by itself and didn't look very bookish. So, Kay is a master at this. She told me to put it under a stack, side by side, and now hopefully you see and go
Look
order
at
it on
that.
Amazon.com. The
Yes,
4A
order it
formula,
now.
untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. So, thanks so much for your time, Kay.
Thank you, John. Look for my review.